Joining us now, Corey Lewandowski. He's a New York Times bestseller 2 times over, author with Dave Bossie, Let Trump Be Trump, book number 1, and then Trump's Enemies, book number 2. Got to buy it. Got to buy both of them, actually, if you haven't bought the 2 of them. Easiest thing, go to my website, johnfredericksradio.com, and it's right there. And they just click on it, or click on them both, and you can buy it. Take you 5 minutes. So you want to do that. And he is also the author, along with Dave Bossie, of the hottest podcast in America that comes out every Thursday. I can't wait till it comes out. I mean, I can't wait. As soon as that thing comes out, like, I stop my car, pull over, and tuned it in because it's so hot. Best one in the United States. So you have to do that. You can go to Google Play or anything else. It's called Deep in the Swamp. So all you have to do, Google it. It'll come right up. It's all over the place. Plus, it's on our website, too. Right? I make it so convenient for you. Plus, all of our new apps are out. Droid's out. iPhone's out. Just go to iPhone App Store or Google Play. John Frederick Show. Download our app. Now that I've said all that 5-minute intro, Corey Lewandowski finally joining us. Hey, Corey, good to have you with us, man.
Good morning, John. Thanks for having me back.
Do you miss me in Washington?
I do, yeah. Well, it's snowy in the swamp today, so they've closed the government, which means we're saving money. Actually, it means no damage can be done, so I'm very happy about that. But, Washington, D.C. is in panic mode because we've got almost an inch of snow on the ground.
That is definite panic mode. Now, also, when I'm not there, you save money because when I'm there, you buy me Dunkin' Donuts coffee, plus a bagel, plus cream cheese, plus a sandwich. So when I'm not there, you actually save money.
Whatever it takes to keep you happy. Look, you're my favorite radio show host, so if I can rent you for a cup of coffee, I'm very happy to buy you as much coffee as you want.
No, it's the bagel that does it, really.
It's the bagel that gives you the, that's right. Nothing but the best from Dunkin' Donuts.
It's the, when you weigh 265 pounds like me, it's the bagel that matters. Okay, let's get to let's get to the hot stuff going on here, Corey. Let's start with President Trump's emergency declaration, as you know, on Thursday, and now a 16-state lawsuit by Democratic states led by California. Virginia also included in that. What do you make of it?
Well, look, this is the question if the president has the legal authority to declare a national emergency should not be a legal question. The president is using the same exact declaration that every president up to and from Jimmy Carter has used for national emergencies. Remember, Barack Obama declared a national emergency when 12 people died from swine flu. The president said that just yesterday he re-announced that part of his national emergency is going to extend a national emergency which had been implemented by a previous president as it relates to drug interdiction. And so there's no challenge on that, but the 16-state challenge is simply an opportunity for the Democrats to once again politicize the issue of border security and try and prevent the president from building a wall on our southern border. And what I'm missing, John, is we see these 16 states and the Democrat attorneys general from those states suing. Why don't we have the opportunity to have the Republican attorneys general going to the Fifth Circuit, which would be much more beneficial from a court perspective to get a ruling so the president can do this as opposed to waiting for the Ninth Circuit to weigh in? And I believe, regardless, if this makes it to the Supreme Court, it will ultimately end up in the same exact status that the president's travel ban was, which is a 9-0 decision from the Supreme Court saying, yes, he has the legal authority to do this.
So what would it take for the Republican attorney generals? This is an interesting idea that you have. What would it take for Republican attorney generals to get together and just get an immediate ruling?
It's exactly what the Democrats are doing. Look, the problem is sometimes, we play defense when we should be playing offense. And I can tell you, and I won't say who, but I know that I had spoken directly with one of the Republican attorneys general in the last 24 hours and said, hey, how come we're not on the offense on this? How come we're not going down and filing a declaration in a court? See, if we had a ruling, as an example, from the Fifth Circuit, which is historically much more conservative than the Ninth Circuit, then if the Ninth Circuit put a stay on it, it wouldn't matter because the Fifth Circuit, if it had ruled first, would say this is legal. Right, and then it would obviously go to the appeals process, and then from there it would go to the Supreme Court, which ultimately I think is where we believe this is going to go. But I would say we should be proactive. We should have probably briefed some of the Republican attorneys general and said, hey, as soon as we file this, as opposed to letting the Democrats file this in the Ninth Circuit for a stay, why don't we proactively go and ask the Fifth Circuit to make a ruling on this so we can be ahead of them? That's where sometimes we miss opportunities coming out of the building.
I think you're right. Why play defense when we could be playing offense? And that was another thing you missed. And, it goes back to a lot of what we said a long time, the president not altogether served by the people surrounding him. He's got some good people in there now, Corey, but still you got some that really don't believe in his agenda and don't move it forward, which brings me to former Legislative Affairs Director Mark Short, who is now the Chief of Staff for Vice President Mike Pence. I'm not a fan of his. Obviously, we fought him during the nomination process where he had an organization well-funded by the Koch brothers in order to stop Trump at all costs, as you remember. But, you let bygones be bygones. Many people that fought us then joined the effort. That's fine. He became legislative director. But a lot of people feel that Mark Short fought Trump's America First agenda at every turn. Now he's out, he leaves. Now he ends up back as Vice President Mike Pence's Chief of Staff. Just enlighten us as to what the deal is here.
Well, look, Mark, I've known Mark Short, in full disclosure, for 25 years, maybe 20 years, a long time, and he had been with, then in the old days, Congressman Mike Pence. That's how long his relationship goes, when Mike was a congressman from Indiana and the chairman of the Republican Study Committee. So Mark had been around a long time. He is clearly a trusted, close friend of the vice president, someone who the vice president's family knows. And after Nick Ayers left the job and chose to leave government entirely, the vice president wanted somebody that was going to make sure that they stayed for the rest of the vice president's first term, who understood what the vice president wanted and could make the trains run on time. And Mark, as you said, had run a big organization funded by the Kochs in the past, but he does know the vice president, and I think the vice president should have people around him that are 100% on his team and that he trusts. And clearly Mark has always been part of that inner circle, and so the vice president now made the decision to bring him forward.
Do you think it's a good move?
Look, I think it's important that the vice president has who he wants, and if the vice president is happy with the selection, I know Mark well. I think that's important. But what I also think is there may be some value to having someone who understands the building, and I think Mark would say that the role that he was in previously as a legislative director for the White House was probably not the right role for him. Mm-hmm. He is much more suited to be part of the vice president's staff and probably should have been the vice president's first pick to be the chief of staff when he came into office.
All right. You're with the John Fredericks Radio Network. We're with Corey Lewandowski, former campaign manager, Trump for President campaign, author of 2 New York Times bestsellers, Let Trump Be Trump and Trump's Enemies. You can get those in your favorite bookstore. Go to Amazon, go to my website. It's all there. Also, his podcast coming out Thursday. So I don't run out of time, Corey. Your podcast topic for this week, what is it?
Very simple. It's lying Andy McCabe and the crooked FBI and what he has done to promote himself on his recent book tour, the lies that he has continued to promulgate. We talk about this, John. We talk about actually how bad Andy McCabe is, the former deputy director of the FBI who was actually serving as the acting director after Jim Comey was fired. This notion that he had a discussion about the 25th Amendment with Rod Rosenstein, who we're very happy to report is also leaving government service. But Andy McCabe, in his interviews claims the FBI is this phenomenal organization. They have the utmost integrity. But he does not talk about the fact that the FBI fired him, the highest ranking, at the time, government official from the FBI ever to be fired. He was recommended by the IG, the Inspector General of the FBI, to be fired and for criminal referral. And look, Meghan McCain did an interview with Andy McCabe yesterday, and I don't know if any of your listeners have seen it or heard it. It is a complete takedown, and it's the questions that the rest of the media refuses to answer or ask him. And the questions were, you lied then, you lied then, you lied then. Why do we believe you're not lying right now? And she specifically, John, asked him, can you say today that you were not the leak to the New York Times and you've never leaked information to the media? And Andy McCabe said, there were two people authorized to speak to the media, and I was one of those two people. In other words, he has now publicly admitted that he was the leak to the New York Times. He's publicly admitted that he was leaking information, but he said because he was one of two people authorized, it was okay and isn't a leak. It's a leak because he did it anonymously to hurt the president, to try and remove a duly elected individual. And our podcast this week, Dave and Corey from Deep in the Swamp, is going to be about Andy McCabe, and we question why he's not in jail right now.
Let me ask you this. He's actually not in jail, but he's making money over this book because this is all coming out because he's on a book tour in order to get rich. This whole coup d'etat attempt against the president, whatever you want to call it, invoking the 25th Amendment, recruiting Rod Rosenstein to wear a wire. He said right on 60 Minutes they were counting noses of people in the cabinet that might, how they could get to a majority. Rex Tillerson came up as, one person they thought they could count on. I mean, all this is coming out now, and Rosenstein first blows it off. No, that's a joke. Now McCabe says, no, actually, it isn't a joke. He said it a second time and was serious about it. What is there any outrage for this? I've been asking this all day. I just can't believe that the legacy fake news media is not going crazy over this.
John, it doesn't fit the narrative. You know what the narrative should be? Bernie Sanders announced he was running for president yesterday. And by the way, John, he honeymooned in Russia, okay? The former USSR, the former Soviet Union. Can you imagine if Donald Trump honeymooned in Russia 25 years ago, 30 years ago, what the outrage would be, right? It's the fake news. And so the media doesn't want to question Andy McCabe because he's one of them. He's one of the beautiful people. He's one of the swamp creatures. He's everything that's wrong with Washington. Don't forget, his wife ran for the state senate in Virginia. She got a $750,000 contribution from the Clinton original bagman. You know who that is, right? Governor McAuliffe, right? And they cleared the field for her. He should have recused himself from the Clinton investigation. He never did. And there's been no accountability. I don't see how Andy McCabe can be out on a book tour making money off of the lies and not being held accountable. If that was me, John, they'd be kicking the living dog crap out of me every day, questioning every comma, every period, every word in the book, and calling me a liar. But instead, the legacy media gives this guy a pass, and then he goes on to lie about more things where he says, Donald Trump doesn't believe his own intelligence community, and this is what he said about Vladimir Putin. It's a complete lie. Everything that comes out of this guy's mouth is a lie, and I want Bill Barr to kick down this guy's door and drag him out, perp walk him out, and put him in jail.
That it may come to that. I just had Congressman from Virginia, 9th District, Southwest, Morgan Griffith on, who said he was calling for a special prosecutor now, regardless of what Mueller does, a new special prosecutor appointed by Barr to investigate McCabe, Comey, Rosenstein, and a whole cabal in there because of what they were attempting to do and how they were doing it, and the fact that the guy was going to, the deputy and at the time acting, I guess, Attorney General, for all intents and purposes, wanted to go in with a wire and entrap the president. I mean, it's just like stuff. If you were to write a novel on it and submit it to your publisher before this happened, they would kick it back and said it's too not believable. Get something that people can actually believe. I mean, Clancy couldn't even write this.
It's so true, John, right? This is what happens in Mickey Mouse countries and third world dictatorships where they say, hey, we don't like who just got elected. We're going to, overthrow the government. We're going to pull the cabinet, whatever it is. And don't forget, these are individuals who had guns and badges and abused their authority and spied on guys like me and Dave Bossy and the rest of the people of the Trump campaign because they didn't like our politics. Not because we did anything wrong, because they didn't like our politics. Just think, and if this doesn't scare your listeners, nothing will. Think if for 1 second the Donald Trump administration was doing the same thing to Elizabeth Warren or Kamala Harris or anybody else, whoever the Democratic nominee is going to be, think if the Trump administration and the members of the FBI and the intelligence community were spying on those people because they didn't like their politics. It would be called treason. It would be front page news every day for the rest of the administration, and those people would go to jail. But because they did it to us, there's been no accountability. And now that we have a new attorney general who really started yesterday, even though the government's closed today, he, I hope, is taking a fresh look at this and is going to make some recommendations and some enforcement of those abuses.
Let's hope he does, so we can finally get some real accountability, Corey, in this government for a change. Let's get to Trump 2020, the campaign hiring now a bunch of people. Kayleigh McEnany as, I think, spokesperson or press secretary. They hired a communications director. They're ramping up. We've got about 18, 19 months. What do you think of Trump's chances in 2020? You look at some of the polling in the states he won, Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. They're upside down right now. How do we change that and win?
Well, look, John, I'm very optimistic about the build-out of the campaign team. I've had the opportunity to talk with those guys a lot, and I know that they're being very methodical about it, and that's important. That being said, right, we have to make sure we are fulfilling the promises that were outlined 3 years ago. Building the wall is one of many promises, but we also talked about, selling health insurance across state lines and giving people access to cheaper health insurance and making sure that pre-existing conditions are covered. And saving jobs in the coal and steel industry and renegotiating the bad trade deals with China and other countries. And the president is fulfilling these promises. But the great news for us is the Democratic field is so far to the left, so outside the mainstream so far, that they don't have a candidate that can actually get elected in Pennsylvania or Ohio or Wisconsin or Michigan. Now, that's not to say that others won't get into the race, because I think there are 9 people in the race right now with 2 additional who filed exploratory committees. But there's no chance that the people of Pennsylvania are going to vote for Bernie Sanders. There's no chance that the people of Ohio are going to vote for Kamala Harris. There's no chance that the people of Wisconsin are going to vote for Cory Booker. So that's great news for this president, and we want as big of a Democratic field as possible so we can see just how far left they really are and how their socialist agenda, which is truly what it is at the forefront. We like that, and we are very focused. The campaign is very focused on building the right team to make sure that come November of 2020, it has one goal and one goal only, is to make sure Donald John Trump is reelected President of the United States.
Well, I tell you what, we played a clip earlier. Barney Frank, former congressman in Massachusetts, one of the most liberal congressmen for a long time. Barney Frank is now become the moderate voice of reason of the Democratic Party. That can show you how far they've gone. And I just don't see any circumstance where they're not going to nominate, Corey, the most liberal person out there. What about you?
Look, I think if the Democrats are smart, they should be looking at a guy like Joe Biden, who has some ability to win in states like Pennsylvania and the blue-collar areas. I don't think they're going to do that. And I think a guy like former Mayor Bloomberg, who's already said he's willing to put at least $500 million into this race, whether he runs or he gives it away, is someone who the progressives are going to be looking at. And John, you're exactly right. When guys like Barney Frank and Nancy Pelosi are the moderates in the Democratic Party, man, have we come a long way. John Kennedy could not get elected today. He couldn't get the nomination. Bill Clinton couldn't get the nomination today. Look, I'm not convinced Barack Obama, if he were to run for president, could get the nomination in 2020, because everything is free education, free everything. The rich pay for it all. And by the way, thank you for getting rid of 25,000 new jobs in New York and billions of dollars in revenue, AOC. This is what they think. They think that getting rid of jobs, not creating jobs, is a thing of value. They don't understand that when the rich, if you will, or the top 10% stop paying their fair share, right, there's nothing that the bottom 1% is going to get from it.
Well, that's where they're headed right now, and you're right. When the Democrats are celebrating job loss in their district, something is really screwy. We're with Corey Lewandowski. We've only got a minute. Senior advisor of the Great America Committee. For more information, go to greatamericacommittee.com. That is Vice President Mike Pence, Hard Money Political Action Committee. His podcast coming out tomorrow, the #1 podcast in America. If you don't do podcasts, that's fine. Do this one, Deep in the Swamp. You can get that. Just go to roughrider.media, Google Play, or anything else, Deep in the Swamp. Corey, I'm almost out of time. I've only got a minute. So let me just ask you this. The president, he's going to start building some of the barrier with the $1.4 billion he got, right? At what point you think he can access the other $8 billion? And I only have a minute.
Well, John, the way the president has structured the national emergency, right, the emergency declaration, is he's immediately entitled to not only the $1.375 billion that Congress authorized, but he's entitled to about $600 million of funds at the Treasury Department, and then he has another pot of money which has direct and immediate access to. The emergency declaration is really for about $3 to $3.5 billion. So the $8 billion total, the president actually, between Congress's appropriation and other pots of money which don't declare that emergency, he already has about $4.5 billion available to him. So that's important. But the court is ultimately going to decide if he can get access to that last $3. We don't need $8 billion to do the wall, John. We really need about $5. So we're probably 90% of the way that we need to be, regardless of what the court's decision is. And look, this is a pledge that he made and he must fulfill. Fix the broken portions of the wall and rebuild build the rest, and that is a recipe for success.
We're out of time. I want to thank Corey Lewandowski for being with us. Get his podcast comes out tomorrow, Deep in the Swamp, roughrider.media, or on Google Play or anything else. Corey, thanks for being with us, man. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you, John. Okay.
Ben